New census data says that some of the fastest growing languages in the U.S. are African. According to an article in Quartz, Swahili, Yoruba, and Somali were some of the languages that saw the biggest increase from 2016 to 2018. And it says that Africans now make up 39% of the foreign-born black population in the U.S. And also, more and more Africans are attempting to enter through the Mexican border. So Irene Nwoye is the author behind that piece, and she joins me now from Washington. So this is really interesting, Irene. Why are we seeing this jump in numbers when it comes to African languages here in the U.S.?
Thank you, Anne-Marie. We're seeing this jump in the numbers because of current immigration trends. Pew Research Centers showed us data that showed that the African immigrant population has doubled every decade since 1970. So, and these Africans are coming to the U.S. for a variety of reasons. Some of them are fleeing political instability in their home countries. We also have African immigrants who are coming as economic migrants because of hardship at home. The top 5 poorest countries in the world at the moment are all located in Africa. And you have young people who are coming here to further their education. Africa has the largest concentration of young people in the world. So you have these young people coming to the U.S. To further their education. And you also have people who are beneficiaries of the diversity visa program, which takes in a majority of African immigrants.
So I think, you know, many people will remember the president talking about questioning why this country accepts so many people from, in his words, S-hole countries. Presumably, he's talking about some of the poorer countries the poor countries here, including many of them that are African. So I think a lot of people will be surprised to hear that African languages are increasing at the rate that it is. How are Africans coming here? You gave us a list of sort of reasons why they come here, but give us a sense of what their path is.
Okay, so the African immigrants who are coming here as asylum seekers are basically traveling from Africa to Ecuador in South America, and then traveling through Latin America through a number of countries like Guatemala, Panama, Costa Rica, until they arrive at the Mexican border. And this is specifically just talking about the asylum seekers. And prior to now, like as far back as 2010, UNHCR observed this trend, and they've been able to pass all the way and make their way to the United States. But more recently, the Trump administration has started cracking down on that migrant route. And Mexico, just facing pressure from the Trump administration, has stopped issuing visas, transit visas to African migrants at the border. So a majority of them, you have thousands of African immigrants who are stranded at the Mexican border at the moment and can't proceed because the administration doesn't want them to come to the U.S.
That seems like a particularly challenging way to get into America. Is that because more direct options have been reduced?
Yes, actually, some immigrant researchers believe it's because the EU has started cracking down on that Mediterranean route. As far back as 2013, a majority of Africans were traveling through Libya, across the Mediterranean to Italy and Spain. But more recently, the EU has started cracking down on that route. It's signed deals with African countries such as Libya and Morocco, and also Niger, to limit migration to Europe. So we're seeing a reduction in those numbers. They've actually been cut down as much as 90%. And so some people speculate that you're seeing a diversion. So African immigrants are now going through the U.S. instead.
Wow. I mean, so we're seeing a pretty sort of marked increase in the number of African immigrants showing up at the Mexican border. But we've done story after story about the challenges when it comes to crossing the border legally. We're talking about people seeking asylum. So we're not talking about people who are trying to get across the border illegally. They have a legal reason to seek asylum in this way. I imagine that the president's current policies when it comes to the border have made it even tougher for African immigrants to seek asylum.
Yes, it's made it even harder for African immigrants to seek asylum. They have presented themselves as legal ports of entry, but they cannot proceed on just because of the restrictions that the administration has put on asylum applications at the moment. There's a process called metering that has made it even difficult and has limited number of applicants that can go through at legal ports of entry. So these are some of the challenges that they face. And being stranded in Mexico, they are considered stateless and are being pressured to seek asylum status in Mexico instead of proceeding on to the United States.
That is so fascinating. Thank you so much for your report, Irene.
Thank you for having me.